Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating, honestly kind of urgent policy paper recently released by Anthropic. They're basically arguing that we are speeding toward an absolute crossroads in the high-stakes AI race between the United States and China. And this paper lays out exactly what is on the line. We're going to break down the invisible battlefield of this technological race and look at two very, very different realities we might find ourselves living in by the year 2028. Okay, let's dive into this. Anthropic frames the urgency of this current moment around the recent release of an AI model known as the Mythos Preview. This isn't just some incremental update. This model represents such a massive, sudden acceleration in capabilities that one PRC cybersecurity analyst reacted to it by saying they are, quote, still sharpening our swords while the other side has suddenly mounted a fully automatic Gatling gun. Anthropic is warning us that we are experiencing a dramatic, paradigm-shifting leap forward. And the impact of that leap is just staggering. To put it into perspective, with access to this new Mythos preview model, Firefox was able to fix almost 20 times more security bugs in a single month than their entire monthly average back in 2025. 20 times. That vividly illustrates the immense compounding power of these frontier models. Anthropic argues that this is the new baseline we're operating from, which is exactly why the geopolitical race to control this technology is accelerating so insanely fast. So how exactly is this global race actually being fought? Well, to understand the geopolitical stakes, we first need to look at Section 1, Compute, the AI engine. Compute simply refers to the incredibly advanced semiconductors and hardware resources required to train and deploy these frontier AI systems. Anthropic's core argument here is pretty straightforward. World-class algorithms, top-tier talent, massive data sets, things China absolutely has. All of that is completely useless without the raw hardware power needed to actually run them. The race for AI leadership is fundamentally a race for compute. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer massive scale of the current gap. According to Anthropic's data projections for 2026, Huawei is on track to produce just 4% of NVIDIA's aggregate compute output. Just 4%. So right now, democracies, led by American innovation and backed by strict export controls, are holding a seriously commanding lead in this hardware space. But, as the paper is quick to point out, having a huge lead on paper definitely doesn't mean the race is over. Which brings us right to Section 2, loopholes and distillation attacks. So the source material details the back doors that are currently being exploited to evade U.S. export controls. Anthropic reports that instead of manufacturing their own advanced chips from scratch, authoritarian regimes are utilizing evasive workarounds. We're talking about outright smuggling advanced chips directly into the country. But it also involves exploiting remote access laws. The paper specifically cites reports that companies like Alibaba and ByteDance are training their flagship models on heavily export-controlled U.S. chips simply by accessing them remotely, renting compute power through offshore data centers in places like Southeast Asia. And then we have distillation attacks. Anthropic essentially describes this as a massive, systematic free-riding operation. Bad actors create fraudulent accounts to bypass access controls, and then they systematically harvest the outputs of U.S. frontier models. The paper argues that foreign labs are illicitly extracting billions of dollars worth of American research and innovation to build their own near-frontier models on the cheap. Basically, they're using American AI to train authoritarian AI. And this brilliantly illustrates why Anthropic views this catch-up game as a major global security threat. They point to a CASI study looking at how models respond to malicious requests. We're talking instructions for cyber attacks or biological threats. Well, a Chinese model, DeepSeek R10528, complied with 94% of malicious requests under common jailbreaking techniques. Compare that to U.S. reference models, which comply just 8% of the time. Anthropic heavily underscores this dual-use risk, noting that AI labs in China often release models entirely lacking those crucial safety guardrails. This brings us to the ultimate core thesis of Anthropic's warning, Section 3, 2028, the crossroads. Let's move to and see how this builds into two totally distinct sliding door futures we could be facing in just a few short years. In Scenario 1, the U.S. and its allies lock in a commanding democratic lead, keeping them roughly 12 to 24 months ahead in capabilities. In this reality, democracies set the global rules and safety norms around AI. But in Scenario 2, we hit CCP ecosystem parity. The race is completely neck and neck. The paper warns that in the second scenario, authoritarian regimes catch up to the frontier, ironically by using American compute and distillation loopholes to do it, and they get an equal hand in shaping global AI norms. And the real-world stakes here are massive. Across domains like cybersecurity, global infrastructure, and military capability, the outcomes of these two scenarios are vastly different. Anthropic's analysis shows that a democracy-led Scenario 1 results in secure infrastructure and an overwhelming AI advantage that deters aggression. But they warn that Scenario 2 could result in deeply compromised critical infrastructure all over the globe. If authoritarian AI reaches parity, the paper argues it could literally enable automated repression at an unprecedented, massive scale, while giving foreign cyber forces serious footholds into democratic systems. So, how do we make sure we land in that first scenario? Let's take a look at Section 4, Anthropic's Policy Playbook. The source material doesn't just lay out the problem. It outlines 3 specific, immediate policy recommendations to lock in that crucial 12 to 24-month lead. Step 1 is to close the loopholes. Policymakers have to crack down on chip smuggling and tighten up export laws so foreign labs can't just rent advanced chips through offshore data centers. Step 2 is to defend innovations. We have to actively deter those distillation attacks and protect the billions being invested in American models. And finally, Step 3, champion American AI export. We need to actively promote the global adoption of trusted AI models developed under democratic principles, effectively denying authoritarian ecosystems a global foothold. Which leaves us right here with this final, incredibly important question. Which 2028 reality will policymakers choose today? We are right in the middle of an invisible technological race that is going to define the rest of the century. As Anthropic clearly lays out in their paper, the US and its allies have the advantage right now. But that lead, it's incredibly fragile. Whether or not we close these back doors and protect these innovations today is going to ultimately dictate who gets to set the rules, the safety standards, and the global norms for the entire future of artificial intelligence. It's an absolutely critical space to watch. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we break down another fascinating topic.